All right, let's dive right in. You've probably wondered this a million times. What is it that separates a flash in the pan idea from something that truly changes the world? It can feel like it's just pure magic or random luck. But today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this really cool framework that actually explains the hidden mechanics behind those massive breakthrough ideas.
I mean, it's the billion-dollar question, right? You see it all the time. These absolutely brilliant products that just fail. And then some super simple idea completely takes over the globe. Well, the answer isn't just in the tech, and it's not just in the culture. It's about when those two things come together in this perfect, really powerful alignment. Okay, so to make this feel a little less abstract, let's start with a term that I'm sure you've seen popping up all over the place. It's a fantastic, super modern example of how one of these big ideas really starts to take hold. So this term was actually coined by an investor, Lee Jin, way back in 2019. And what's cool is that the passion economy just gave a name to the shift that was already happening. It's all about creators, coaches, makers, people building entire businesses around what makes them unique, not just, renting out their time to do some generic task.
And what's really interesting here is how it stacks up against the gig economy. Think about it. Gig work often kind of standardizes people, right? It turns them into these interchangeable units, like a driver or a delivery person. But the passion economy is the total opposite. It celebrates your individuality. That's the whole point. It's a feature or not a bug. So this is way more than just a new buzzword. It's a fundamentally new way of thinking about work itself.
Okay, so how does an idea like the passion economy actually happen? Where does it come from? Well, it all starts when you understand that real innovation pretty much always happens at the intersection of two very different worlds. So on one side, you've got what we call socio-cultural concepts. These are the big ideas, the trends, the shifts in what people are doing, and what they want. It's basically the language we develop to talk about these new needs or desires that are bubbling up in society. You can just think of this as the why. And then on the other side, you've got technological concepts. This is the how. These are the tools, the scientific breakthroughs, all the technical stuff that makes new things even possible in the first place. These are the engines that can actually power that sociocultural why we were just talking about. And here's where it all clicks together. Take search engines. The desire for better results, that's a sociocultural need, led to this whole practice of SEO. But none of that would have been possible without a technological concept like Google's PageRank algorithm. Or think about the desire for a new kind of digital money. That's Bitcoin, right? But it's only enabled by the technology of the blockchain. See how that works? One is the cultural want, the other is the technical key that unlocks it. All right, so we've got these two worlds, the cultural why and the technical how. But how do they actually come together to make a product that people actually use? Well, the concept fit model breaks it down into a really simple 3-step process. You can basically think of it as a journey in 3 stages. First, there's the idea. Then you build the product. And finally, you find your market. Let's break down what each of these fits really means. So the first fit is that initial spark, that aha moment. It's where a big societal need or a new cultural idea, like, say, decentralized digital money, finds its technological soulmate. The idea of cryptocurrency was just a perfect fit for what blockchain could do. This is that magic moment where possibility finally meets purpose. Next up is the second fit. This is all about making it real. Because an idea is just, well, it's just an idea until you can actually touch it, use it, play around with it. Bitcoin became the very first tangible product. They call it the exemplar that brought the totally abstract power of blockchain to life for everyday people. Without a real product, an idea is just theory. And finally, we get to the third fit. This is where the product goes out into the real world and meets society. And believe me, this is the ultimate test. Bitcoin didn't just quietly enter a market. It kicked the door down and challenged the very definition of money and finance. It forced this huge cultural conversation that honestly is still going on. And that's the key. True innovation doesn't just serve the existing culture, it actually changes it. Okay, so that 3-step model sounds really nice and neat, doesn't it? Step 1, step 2, step 3. But we all know reality is always way messier. And honestly, it's a lot more interesting. Because the real magic, the really cool stuff, happens when people start using things in ways the creators never, ever intended. Yeah, this is where the story gets really good. Because innovation is not a one-way street from some genius creator down to the passive consumer. No way. Users are not passive at all. They're creative, they're messy, and they are constantly rewriting the rules of the game.
And this brings us to this super important idea, the innovation cycle. So it starts with the fit. Developers design a product for a specific intended purpose. But then users get their hands on it, and they start using it for all sorts of creative, unintended purposes. That creates what's called an unfit. And here's the key. Smart developers don't fight that. They embrace it. They watch what people are doing, and they refit the product with new features to support that new behavior. And that starts the whole cycle all over again.
Now, seriously, let that sink in for a second. The unfit, that weird, unexpected usage, is the absolute engine of innovation. It's where users, just by being creative, invent brand new sociocultural concepts right there on the platform. A perfect example is how early Twitter users just invented the hashtag. The company saw it, realized its power, and then built it right into the platform. That is the cycle in action, right there.
So, with all of this in mind, the big question is, where do the best ideas actually come from, and how can we spot them? Okay, for that, let's look at one last incredibly useful framework.
So, a psychologist named Ronald Fink came up with this really simple but powerful 2x2 grid to help evaluate ideas. On one axis, you have ideas that are either creative or conservative. And on the other axis, they're either realistic or idealistic. This gives you 4 different boxes, but there's one in particular that is the absolute sweet spot for innovation. And that sweet spot, where real game-changing platform innovation lives, is called creative realism. These are the ideas that are super imaginative, totally out there, but, and this is crucial, they're also deeply connected to real-world problems, real tech that actually exists, and real human needs. They're visionary, for sure, but they're also grounded.
And that brings us to what I think is the most exciting part of all this. Because this isn't just some academic framework for looking back at things that already happened. It's a lens you can use to actually see the future.
There's this great quote from the source material that just nails it. It says, "You see some things new happen in the real world, but they have not been named yet. This is the perfect timing for platform innovation." And that's it, right there. The next big thing is almost always a new behavior that's already happening, but nobody's given it a name or built a good tool for it yet. That gap, that's where innovation lives.
So I'm going to leave you with this thought. Just look around you. Seriously, what are people doing in new, unexpected ways? What are those little unfit behaviors that you're starting to notice? And what new piece of technology could be the key to unlock that behavior and turn it into the next huge socio-cultural concept? Because the next big fit, it's out there, right now, just waiting for someone to see it.